When collecting motion capture data, there are a lot of factors that can contribute. Some you can control, some you can't. If you have windows that are 20 meters off the ground, you can't put curtains on them and the light shines in at a specific time of day and hits the cameras just right, therefore you can't collect data. That would be an example of a factor that is very hard, if not impossible, to control. This isn't some made-up scenario. It has happened to labs that I've consulted with actually 2 different times in 2 completely different geographical areas, that there ended up being a time of day that they could not collect data at for that exact reason. Unfortunately, there was very little that could be done. It was a half-hour to 1-hour window, depending on the time of year, that they just couldn't collect data because the sun would hit exactly right at the cameras and it couldn't be done. And this actually was with 2 different brands of cameras, so it wasn't even camera related. It was environment related. That is an example that you can't control. Another example might be that you have force plates in the ground and you're next to a busy road. When a truck drives by, the force plates are picking up the signal, messing up your force data. That would be another example. Very little you can do about it. Other things that you can actually do things about is, for example, markers laying around. I have saved a few markers here. As you can see, here we have some markers just kind of messing things up. That may not seem like much, but it's possible that things will get particularly confused, and especially depending on the angle, that these markers, you know, they're like the ones we just took off of Jason, and this happens a lot in labs. They're just laying around, you're like, oh, I'm going to take the tape off later on. This can actually cause problems in a later data collection because they're sitting out, and it can happen that it confuses the cameras in identifying the markers that are actually on the patient that you're trying to record. So that's a very simple example. Simplest solution, put markers away. Or another problem that can present itself is reflections on your patient, and we talked about that a little bit. Always have opaque tape around and cover those up because that can hide those reflections off of their clothes that you're not trying to record. Now, the reason this is, we usually tell our patients to come in, or our subjects to come in, wearing skin-fitting clothing. Most of the clothing that people have that would fall into that category would be like running shorts. Running shorts are designed to be reflective so people don't get hit by cars. The problem is that same material reflects the light from the cameras. Covering them with opaque tape easily solves the problem, and you don't have to spend hours in post identifying which marker is a real marker and which one is a reflection from your subject's clothing. Another example of problems that can arise have to do with factors that are nearly impossible to correct in post-processing. Not completely impossible, depending on the manufacturer of your motion capture system, but let's say we have this cluster placed right here on the floor. Now, right now, we have 4 markers there. And actually, as I go cause the problem, I'll show you another common thing that can come up. If I go stand in front of a camera, this can cause significant issues in our data. And in fact, it is likely this might have happened in a few takes with Jason, as I did almost exactly that. But back to this issue, here we have 4 markers here on the floor. Easily identified as 4 markers. One of the things that happens a lot in labs is patients like to touch. They're curious or they're just clumsy. If they move your tripod it causes problems in your data. It's unlikely that they'll touch cameras that are up on the ceiling, so that's less of an issue, but even the ones on the ceiling can be moved, and that's why you should recalibrate regularly. But say, like in this case, this tripod gets bumped. You can see here, as we're moving them around now, you're seeing some extra markers, especially when they're in front of this camera. Why would you see these extra markers? Well, this has to do with the cameras being out of calibration now, because they think they're in one location when in fact they're in a different location, resulting in that extra marker being identified. And it's kind of moving around. It also takes away from the reliability of your data. So be very careful to recalibrate before you collect any more data after cameras have been moved. And if you think there's any chance they might have been moved, recalibrate. Seriously, it only takes 30 seconds. It'll save you hours of headaches and possibly having to call your patient back to do the test again. So there are several other things that could potentially go wrong, but these are some of the major ones that I've personally seen in a lot of labs happen. So keep them in mind and just be careful with your data so that you get good data to export from your motion capture system. And in fact, in the next unit, we're going to discuss how to get the data out of your motion capture software to be able then to work with it in a software like Visual 3D.